Hello, it's Mike again, and welcome to our next CD, which is Handling Objections. This, I have to tell you, is always one of my favorite topics for a lot of reasons, primarily because the agents like yourself that understand handling objections and learn the responses to the objections they get are always going to be virtually light years ahead of the rest of the agents, because handling objections is very much part of the actual sales process. There's many steps in selling, as you know, prospecting, lead follow-up, pre-qualifying, all the things we're talking about in this sales kit for you. But the truth is, when it comes to real good, strong sales, the ability to handle objections is always one of those areas that most agents seem to fail at the highest level. Let's make sure that you become the professional agent you deserve to become with the production you deserve by learning to handle objections very well. So let's go to point number one. We're going to start by defining what an objection is. It's a question in the mind of the customer that remains unanswered. Our job in selling is to answer the questions that sellers ask. And an objection is a question. Well, let's take an example. The customer says to you, "I want to think it over." Now, the average agent freezes, absolutely panics on the spot. The good agents like yourself say to themselves, "Okay, the customer said I want to think it over. Obviously, there's something that I've said that remains unanswered in their mind. I need to find out what that is." So the good salesperson looks at an objection, "I want to think it over," as being a question. "Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I agree. It's very important that you think this thing through carefully. However, before I leave, what exactly is it you need to think about?" Well, what we need to think about is, and then they unveil the question they have. So what I want you to think about is that an objection is a question in the mind of the customer that remains unanswered. Our job is to answer their questions. Point number two is a totally different thought, and that is the word condition. And a condition is a statement of fact that you can do nothing about. So you move on, you move forward. See, for example, a condition. I want to buy $1 million house, but I'm unemployed, and I don't have a job, and I don't have any income, and I have no money in the bank. Do you think somebody will sell me one? Well, that's a condition. It's a statement of fact you can't change. Watch. I would like to play professional basketball. My problem is I'm 67 years old. My problem is I don't know how to play basketball, and I'm out of shape. Well, that's a condition. See, there's nothing you can do to change that. What you have to do in selling is through asking good questions, and all of our scripts lead you to this. Through our good scripts in selling, you have to distinguish between an objection and a condition. The third point, and this is such an important point for you to focus on. Remember, there's a direct correlation between the number of objections you receive and the strength and quality of your presentation itself. Now think about what I just said. There's a direct correlation between the amount of objections you receive and the strength and the quality of your presentation itself. If you really take the time to become a master presenter, and that really, in essence, is your job, isn't it? To become a master presenter. When you become a master presenter, you'll notice that people don't say things like, "I want to think it over. I want you to cut the commission. I've got a friend in the business." See, a master presenter does not get those objections because the master presenter, the one that's really honed in on making a great presentation, the buyers and sellers want to deal with you. They want to sign a contract. They want to be involved. So there's a very direct correlation between the strength of the presentation and the objections you receive. Point number four, since objections never change, because they never change, don't be afraid of them, learn the answers. I'm always amazed. People will send me an email, and it's one of our good coaching clients like yourself. "Mike, I received this objection last week, and oh my God, I was just devastated. I've never heard it before. You have to help me out. Here's the objection, ... in quotes. Mike, I have a friend in the business, close quotes. When they said that to me, Mike, I didn't know what to do. I was frozen." Wait a minute. The objection, "I've got a friend in the business." The objection, "I want to think it over." The objection, "I want you to cut the commission." These objections have been around for 40 or 50 years. Here's the thought. Why don't you make a list of the common objections you receive all the time, and then write out an answer to each one and learn the answer. And what you'll discover, there's only a half a dozen objections that a seller will ever give. The problem is we don't have competitors of yours that are smart enough to figure out the answers. Learn the answers to common objections, you've mastered the problem. Point number five, Keep working on strengthening the presentation as a method of bringing the seller to your side. There's really no reason why there has to be a battle between you and the seller. There's no reason why there has to be a battle between you and the buyer. See, the truth is, through a good presentation, you're bringing them to your side of the table. You're looking at it from their perspective. They're seeing what you're trying to accomplish and present. So by strengthening the presentation, you bring the seller to your side, which in essence does eliminate or certainly bring down the strength of most objections they will give. Point number 6, you don't have to get objections if you pre-qualify properly, and follow the script. Now think about that for just a minute, okay? We ask you to ask a lot of pre-qualifying questions to a buyer or a seller. If you really ask all the pre-qualifying questions, any objections they would like to give are drawn out before the presentation is made. So therefore, when you're actually doing the presentation, you don't have to really ever be stopped by objections if you've asked all the pre-qualifying questions, because the pre-qualifying questions are designed to bring out the objection before the objection take place. Number 7, handling objections is primarily mind over matter. We can remove the fears we have about them by learning the answers and practicing them every day. Really, for anybody that's involved in coaching with us today, to have a fear of the objections that come about, anybody that sits back and is petrified or is completely stumped by an objection today, it means you simply haven't taken the time to A, learn your presentation, and 2, to learn the answers. Because you and I both know, since the objections are all the same, the answers are all the same. Point number 8 is don't try to handle the objections during the pre-qualifying process or during your prospecting. So you're doing your pre-qualifying, and they say to you, well, you know, we are going to compare companies. We're going to talk to a couple other firms. Great. Now, they've given me the objection. They're going to compare companies. Now what I have to say to myself is, I need to go in and be better than anybody else could be. I have to be stronger, more efficient, to the point, more enthusiastic, because I know I have competition. Or during the pre-qualifying, they say to you, are you kidding? $325,000? We were thinking $375,000. Well, during the pre-qualifying, they've drawn out the price. You've drawn out the price objection. You don't try to handle it in pre-qualifying, but you say to yourself, wow, they've now given me their price objection, which they're going to give me again a little later. I might as well prepare for it properly. Point number 9, to learn the answers, and this is so important, guys and gals, to learn the answers, take one objection per week, write out 2 or 3 ways of handling it, practice them, role play them, until it's committed to memory. I mean, you've heard me say this before, because this was my standard answer. The seller would say, Mike, you know, we've talked to a couple of agents. We want you to cut the commission. I would smile and say, no, any other questions? And they would say, what? I would say, no, any other questions? And they'd say, what do you mean, no? Look at my lips. No, I'm not going to cut the commission. Any other questions about what I presented so far tonight? Everything makes a lot of sense. Would you sign the contract, please? I mean, you see, if you don't know the answer, you cannot be strong in your ability to present. Number 10, you don't have to have a lot of different answers to objections that you receive. You just need to have 1 or 2 good responses to the common ones you get all the time. See, this is not a big chess match here. This is not a big game. It's a matter of simply having a couple of reasonable answers to the common objections you receive, and then go ahead and give them to the seller when you receive them. So watch point number 11. When handling objections, and this is a philosophy I learned, and I'm going to have to date myself a lot here, in my early 20s, and I learned this philosophy from a man named Al Tomsic. And Al Tomsic was a real estate sales trainer back in the early to late 60s and early 70s that I had the good fortune of getting to know. And he said, when you're handling an objection, always agree, always smile, always nod your head, and never argue. I remember saying to Al, no, wait a minute. The customer says, I want you to cut the commission. You want me to agree? He said, well, obviously you're not going to agree to cut your commission, but you're going to smile, you're going to nod your head as you understand what they're saying, and don't get in a fight. Don't get defensive. Okay? Don't start to argue with them. Now watch this. Point number 12, although you will use emotion during your presentation, because we use emotion during our presentation, use logic when handling objection. it's easier for the prospect to understand the logic of what you're doing than to get emotionally taunt and upset or too excited, which goes back to what Al Tomsic said, always agree, always smile, nod your head, never argue, okay? Now watch number 13. Remember not to argue because it puts a prospect on the defense, and it makes it more difficult to get a contract signed. See, in selling, you're always working to be on the side of the customer that you're trying to sell. In selling, you're always trying to get the customer to understand what you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to do. In selling, you're always trying to be on the same side with the party that you're talking to, which means you cannot be involved in an argument with them. And it's so interesting to watch how often agents, because they don't know anything about the sales process, will start an argument or a fight with a buyer or seller when all they had to do is smile, nod their head, and then give a respectable answer that is logical that the seller or buyer can understand. Okay? Point 14. Learn to recognize that at times the prospect is simply bringing up an objection to create conversation. Understand that you can smile and continue without answering. See, many times they're just trying to delay the process down. Okay? They're gonna just try to slow it down. They know they're gonna sign a contract with you. They know that you're the right agent, and they just don't want to give in too fast. Some people, just like to do that. It's just their little control game they play with themselves. So I'm gonna make it tough for this guy. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna throw a couple of objections out here to see how good this person really is. Well, the truth is, they can smile and say, well, we have many friends in the business we need to talk to, and I just smile and nod my head and keep right on my sales presentation because I'm there to make a sales presentation. Point number 15, remember, objections usually come from somebody that wants to work with you, but just simply has a couple of questions. Remember, an objection is a question in the mind of the customer that remains unanswered. So with this thought, you can get excited about having the opportunity to respond to objections they give. See, I always felt that one of two things would happen. I'll never get an objection during my presentation, or they're going to give me 2 or 3 to test me. Either one, I was okay with that. If I never got an objection, I almost always got the contract signed because they were so in tune to what I was saying. And remember, a great presentation, you're not going to get a lot of objections. But every once in a while, you'll meet a seller or a buyer that gives you 2 or 3 just to kind of like a little jab to see how you do. I used to always smile and say, good, I got this one because they're testing me at this moment. So remember, handling objections is many times nothing more than a test. Point 16, remember that knowledge always equals confidence. You've heard me say this time and time again. Knowledge equals confidence, and your knowledge inspires confidence in the mind of the prospect when you answer their questions. See, you're inspiring them to your side when you answer their questions. Point 17, remember, in most cases, they won't ask you a question or give you an objection if they weren't considering working with you. See, if they weren't considering going with you, signing a contract with you, they wouldn't go through the exercise of getting all their questions answered. They would just wave you off, nod, smile, say, good, we'll talk to you later, bye, thank you. But if they're interested, they will give you a couple of objections now and then just to, again, test you and see how good you are. Now, watch point 18. Keep the toughest objections with a good answer that you receive posted in your prospecting area. So you always have an immediate response because it's important to have a response. Another thought is have the answers to the objections on 3x5 cards and then just review them and look at them throughout the course of the day, okay? You've got to keep yourself sharp, aware. You've got to keep yourself abreast of what's going on. You can't for a minute let up on the fact that these things do come up and you have to have a response. So watch point 19. I wrote down, thinking it over is not an objection. It's a smokescreen for what is really concerning the seller. Question them, find out if it's commission, if it's price, if it's terms. I want to think it over is a meaningless statement, and it's a smokescreen. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, thanks for bringing that up. Before I leave, may I just ask, what specifically do you have to think about? Well, we have to think about the price you gave us. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I not clarify that price to the point that you can make a decision quickly? See, what you're doing is you're always trying to find out what really is going on when they give you these kind of thoughts. So the obvious question then is, what are some of the ways I can use to learn how to handle an objection? So my first thought is always memorize and internalize all of your listing and showing scripts. Guys and gals, in a real sales job, not real estate, there's thousands of scripts that an agent or a salesperson has to learn. In real estate, there's only a handful of scripts. There's an expired script, a buy owner script, a qualifying script, a listing presentation script. I mean, there's not that much to learn. Memorize, internalize. B, work to understand the logic in the script. Look at the scripts we give you and say to yourself, okay, what is Mike trying to accomplish here? What was Matthew trying to teach me? Okay? What was I trying to learn when they gave me this script? C, understand the client will believe you when you believe you. Therefore, you have to think about the fact that you cannot be involved in what we call sing-song. You can't be involved in ending all of your thoughts on a high note, because that leaves that question mark out there in the future. You create strong control when they believe that you believe. See, when you believe in you, as much as I believe in you, you're going to become a bigger star than you already are. Next, I wrote down, know that what is true and factual is what they will believe. If I really want to handle objections, I have to know my facts. I have to know what is true. And then last I wrote down, create additional scripts if you have to by listening to what your prospects say and working on logically responding to them. And then the last point on handling objections is a fun one. And again, this comes straight from my friend L. Tomsic, where he said the rules of handling objections. Never argue, always agree. Smile and nod your head a lot. Ask a lot of questions. Listen carefully to the answers they give you. Answer the objection if necessary, and keep moving forward with your presentation. Never stop moving forward, because see, the truth is, most of what they say is just going to be a minor stall. Most of what they say is just being said for something to say, and the faster we move forward, better off we are. You probably will want to listen to this particular CD several times, and then let's move forward, because our next CD follows handling objections very carefully in the Mike Ferry sales system, and that will be on closing skills. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.